The Hitcher is a 1986 American horror thriller written by Eric Red and directed by Robert Harmon and stars Rutger Hauer, C. Thomas Howell, Jeffrey DeMunn, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. The plot follows a young man's fight for survival along a rural Texas highway after he picks up a violent hitchhiker. Hey guys, fun story, I guess you could say. The Hitcher is yet another classic movie that I'm just getting around to seeing. It happens. I always knew that I eventually would see it, and I guess now was my time. It was as good a time as any to finally put the goddamn thing on. And since over the last few years, I've been really enjoying watching these kinds of, I guess what people call neo-Western films, which I'm sure there's a lot of, and I've probably only seen a few. But I just really love the concept because they aren't, traditional style Westerns, more in spirit, I suppose, if that makes any sense. And it's cool because you can use, the general themes while applying them to your own story. And I'm a sucker for that, kind of stylization. I mean, to my limited knowledge, they go at least as far back as Sam Peckinpah's Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which I watched for the first time, I think 2 years ago. Absolutely loved it. Reviewed it on this channel. You can go check that out if you want. And then there's also the vampire film Near Dark, and even Eddington from last. So yeah, I think The Hitcher just slides right in next to all of those. Although there are obviously all entirely different. Like most classic Western films, it's The Hitcher's setup is very simple. It's as simple as it gets. Jim Halsey, played by a young C. Thomas Howell, who had kicked off his career just 4 years earlier and had already been in movies like E.T., The Outsiders, Red Dawn, and he's our lead here. And Jim is also our unlikely hero, as you'll find in many Western films. He's not a rogue gunslinger or anything. He's not a street fighter, or he's not an outlaw. He's not any of those kinds of things. He's just a young dude, hired to deliver a car to someone across the country, something that used to be pretty common practice back then. And you don't really know a lot about Jim. Seems like a nice young dude, maybe a little naive, but he's got a lot of heart, and that's all there really is to know about the guy. So it's dark and rainy on a desolate Texas highway, where he sees our villain John Ryder, played by Rutger Hauer. And I've always loved this guy, man. He was truly one of the special ones, and he didn't always get his due credit. He was a Dutch actor. So he spent the late 60s and pretty much all of the 70s, over there doing Dutch stuff in the Netherlands. But in the 80s, we saw him kind of cross over to the American audience. Odds are, 1982, not many Americans knew who he was. But with Blade Runner, Rutger Hauer was a name that we would never forget. And I would imagine that whoever cast him as John Ryder did so based on his performance as Batty from Blade Runner. I'd put money on that. You can feel some of that same intensity that Batty had, but John Ryder is a completely different animal, man. But goddamn, Howard just had that it factor, that it factor, When he's on screen, you just watch him. I mean, he just completely commands your attention. I dare you to not pay attention to him when he's on screen. The piercing light blue eyes, his way of toying with people with sometimes very few words, his cold expressions. The man could put on an absolute villain clinic. Which is funny because, as good as he was at playing villains back then, that wasn't his preferred role. John Ryder is an interesting villain, though, in numerous ways. And C. Thomas Howell actually wanted to work with Rutger Hauer because he found him to be actually intimidating and imposing in real life, and he knew that it would just be perfect for Jim Halsey. And I agree. That's some smart. That's some smart thinking by a young actor right there, which, it wasn't even really his job to line things up like that, but very cool. So I think a lot of most of the criticism I've seen so far for The Hitcher, in my opinion, seems to stem from the fact that there isn't much of a plot. To me, though, I mean, that's kind of some dated film criticism for the most part. That said, I do go back and forth with myself on this very same thing. In this film, there's nothing personal between, the villain and everyone else. John Ryder doesn't have any real motivation. He's pretty much just a drifting serial killer. And going back to the modern Western thing, he really does embody the wandering outlaw. Because he does seem to just prey on completely random people along the highway, just kind of murdering them and moving on. And in 1986, I guess this seemed to be a roadblock for some critics. And as much as I want my opinion to differ, I do kind of feel that way. Ryder's only real motivation, is that he likes to kill people, as far as we know, right? I mean, if this doesn't work for you in a film that, that I, for the most part, consider a thriller, it might be interesting to you to know that, and I just only learned this a couple of days ago, that based on Eric Red's original script, the Hitcher was going to have major horror elements. I think the Western vibes were still probably going to be there, but it was going to be, very much a horror movie. I think I would even probably call it a slasher. It seems like numerous scenes were changed or toned down because the studio thought that they were just going to be way too graphic. And they were willing to finance a thriller, but not a horror movie. They just were not into it. I still consider this to be a movie with definite horror elements, though. They're there. So I really do think it's a really cool movie. I do wonder what it would have been like if Eric Red's script was left alone. It would have been cool. Personally, I think it would have been an all-time slasher classic with a villain like John Ryder. I really do. Just a very different movie than what we got. Okay, and the other character I need to mention is Nash, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who has always just been a consistently great actress, even at this young age. I don't know how old she is, 19, 20 it looks like, if I were to guess. And Nash is a truck stop waitress who gets kind of unfortunately tangled up in Jim's mess. With just three main characters, you do get that kind of intimate feeling. There are other like minor characters in here, but they don't have a lot of screen time. And I found this interesting that Rutger Hauer actually said that he considered John Ryder to be a representation of pure evil. So that tells me that he kind of sees it as a classic tale of good versus evil, just like I do. And what I think makes John Ryder so diabolical is that he intentionally tries to frame Jim for some of his murders, seemingly for no reason at all, and that seems to be kind of his thing. So at one point, the biggest threat to Jim becomes the police, and if they can't either catch him or kill him, Ryder is probably going to step in and finally get him. It's definitely a cat and mouse type game. C. Thomas Howell really kills it as the very unlikely hero Jim Halsey and brings to life a very memorable character. I gotta give it to him. Rutger Hauer, though, what can I say? I've already kind of gushed about him. This is one of his best and most memorable roles, in my opinion. I also have to give credit where credit is due to world-class cinematographer John Seal, because there are some really nice shots here, and he gets inventive and creative at just the right moments. Really liked what he did. And Mark Isham's dreamy soundtrack was also great. Really enjoyed it. I'd actually love to just sit down and listen to it by itself one day. So I'm giving The Hitcher a 3 out of 4 stars. It's got that 70s raw and gritty vibe, but is also, almost arty and kind of atmospheric at the same time. I also recommend some of the other films Eric Red has written, like Near Dark and Blue Steel. Definitely check out his work. He's got a great style. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.
Subscribe right now, please.